What is the National Geographic Roper Public Affairs Geographic Literacy Study?
This study assesses the geographic knowledge of young American adults between the ages of 18 and 24. The survey also asks respondents how much they think they know about geography and other subjects, as well as their views on the importance of geographic, technological and cultural knowledge in today's world.
How did the United States reach its present form?
The United States began as 13 British colonies on the Atlantic coast. In 1783, the United States gained the Northwest Territory. The area encompassing what is now Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, and Wisconsin. Spain and the United States agreed on the northern boundary of Florida in 1798, and the United States then took control of the Mississippi Territory. In 1803, the Louisiana Purchase, which included most of the area west of the Mississippi, doubled the size of the country. In 1845, the independent Republic of Texas was annexed and Spain ceded Florida to the United States. In 1846, the Oregon Territory, which included Oregon, Washington, and Idaho, was officially designated with a treaty between the United States and the United Kingdom. The Mexican War of 1846 to 1848 led to the secession of California, Utah Territory, and New Mexico Territory to the United States. The Gadsden Purchase of 1853 added southern Arizona. Alaska was purchased from Russia in 1867 and, finally, Hawaii was annexed by the United States in 1898.
Did everyone during Christopher Columbus's time think that the world was flat?
No, they did not. Though the common perception is that Christopher Columbus had to convince King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella that the world was a sphere. Columbus actually had to convince the king and queen of the circumference of the world. Though the ancient Greeks had discovered that the earth was a sphere, centuries passed before this was generally accepted. By the 15th century, however, the time of Columbus's sailing, most educated people believed the world to be round.
How are mountains formed?
The process of orogeny, or mountain building, is related to continental drift. When two tectonic plates collide, they often form mountains. The Himalayas are the result of the Indo-Australian plate colliding with the Eurasian plate. At these collision zones, volcanoes and earthquakes are common.
What is the Gregorian calendar?
in addition to moving the calendar forward by 10 days in 1582. Pope Gregory XIII also corrected the error of the Julian calendar. He declared that years ending in 00 would not be leap years, except those divisible by 400, such as the year 2000. The Julian calendar, with Pope Gregory's correction, is known as the Gregorian calendar, which most of us use today.
What is a near-Earth object, NEO?
A near-Earth object is any object in space that is relatively close to Earth and is of any size. The difference between a NEO and a potentially hazardous asteroid, FA, is that FAs are anything larger than 500 feet, 150 meters, in diameter and have orbits that bring them closer than 4,650,000 miles, 7,480,000 kilometers, to Earth. All FAs are also NEOs, but not all NEOs are FAs.
How many people are abducted and sold into slavery each year?
About 600,000 to 800,000 people, mostly women and children, are trafficked across national borders each year and forced to work as virtual slaves. Millions more are trafficked within their own countries every year. 75% of these people are women who are used for sexual exploitation. About 280,000 of these people are sent to Asia, and another 210,000 people are trafficked to Europe and Russia. Many countries participate in human trafficking, both as accomplices in providing the people to abduct by not enforcing laws, or by allowing the people to enter their borders. Some of the biggest offenders include Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Kuwait, Malaysia, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, Ukraine, Russia, Moldova, Mexico, India, Egypt, and China.
What is the highest point east of the Mississippi?
North Carolina's Mt. Mitchell is the tallest point east of the Mississippi River at 6,684 feet, 2,037 meters.
Does Yugoslavia still exist?
In 1991, the republics of Yugoslavia fell into disarray and aligned themselves on ethnic and cultural fronts. The old geographic divisions of the country fell apart, and war broke out between various states, including Slovenia, Croatia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Macedonia, and Serbia and Montenegro. Later, in 2006, Montenegro and Serbia also broke apart, and both declared their independence as separate countries in a referendum. Most recently, Kosovo unilaterally declared its independence from Serbia in 2008. Thus, over the course of just 17 years, 7 new countries were added to the map of the world.
Why do people live in floodplains?
People have lived in floodplains for thousands of years. Fertile land for agriculture lines the floodplain, and the nearby water source makes life easier. Unfortunately, when the river does flood, these communities are severely damaged and people suffer. Hazard mitigation, such as levees, dams, dikes and other structures, attempt to limit damage during floods. Sometimes, when the structures fail, such as a levee breaking, large areas are inundated with water. Inhabitants of floodplains must balance the risks with the rewards of living in such an unpredictable environment.
What is the Forbidden City?
The Forbidden City, located in the center of Beijing, China, was the home of the emperor and the entire imperial court for close to 500 years. Completed in 1420, the Forbidden City, also known as the Purple Forbidden City or Gugong, was the home of 24 emperors from the Ming and Qing dynasties. For centuries, visitors were not allowed into this imperial city. In 1950, several decades after the last emperor was expelled, the city was made a museum and opened to the public.
What were Marco Polo's contributions to exploration?
Though Marco Polo did not actually discover anything, his writings in Travels of Marco Polo served as Europe's introduction to the East, and spurred interest in exploration. Marco Polo, born in the mid-13th century in Venice, traveled with his father and uncle to China. During his stay, Polo served the Emperor Kublai Khan as an ambassador, as a governor, and in a host of other diplomatic positions. In his 30s he returned to Venice and fought against the city-state of Genoa and was eventually captured. While imprisoned in Genoa, he dictated the story of his travels to a fellow prisoner, creating the somewhat exaggerated memoir Travels of Marco Polo.
How do airplanes create clouds?
When the air conditions are right and it's sufficiently moist. The exhaust from airplanes often creates condensation trails, known as contrails. Contrails are narrow lines of clouds that usually evaporate rather quickly. Contrails can turn into cirrus clouds if the air is close to being saturated with water vapor.
What are the principal industries in the Maldives?
Tourism and fisheries contribute the most to the Maldives' GDP, which is approximately $1.569 billion per year.
What is global warming?
Global warming is the gradual increase of the Earth's average temperature, which has been rising since the Industrial Revolution. If temperatures continue to increase, some scientists expect major climatic changes, including the rise of ocean levels due to ice melting at the poles. According to many scientists, global warming is primarily due to the greenhouse effect.
What is the actual name of Bogotá?
Bogotá, Colombia, was originally called Santa Fe. More recently, the name became Santa Fe de Bogotá. Today, the Colombian capital is known as Bogotá for short, and about 8 million people live in its metropolitan area.
What is the most popular national park in the United States?
North Carolina and Virginia's Blue Ridge Parkway is the most popular national park, drawing over 17 million visitors each year. Located in the southern Appalachian Mountains, the parkway is a highway through beautiful scenery and includes nearby hiking trails, ranger talks, and bird watching. The other two most visited national parks in the United States are Golden Gate National Recreation Area, which gets about 14 million visitors annually, and Lake Mead National Recreation Area, with 9.4 million.
What time is it in Antarctica?
People based on the many research stations of Antarctica generally observe Greenwich Mean Time, that is, the same time zone as London, England.
How were animals first domesticated?
Dogs were probably some of the first animals to become domesticated. Wild dogs probably came close to human villages scavenging for food and were quickly trained as companions and protectors. Over time, early agriculturalists realized the value of domesticating other animals and proceeded to do so. Many different kinds of animals were domesticated in different areas of the world.
Who carved Mt. Rushmore?
Gutzon Borglum, an American sculptor, designed this national memorial located in the Black Hills of South Dakota. Construction began in 1927 and was nearly complete when Borglum died in March 1941. Borglum oversaw construction of the 60-foot-tall, 18-meter-tall, heads of Presidents George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Abraham Lincoln, and Theodore Roosevelt. After Borglum's death, his son completed the work on the unfinished Roosevelt by the end of 1941.
Are all fjords found in Norway?
No. In fact, fjords are found throughout the world, wherever glaciers retreated and have cut into the earth, filling in and creating a huge valley of sea water. Notable fjords are found in Alaska and on New Zealand's South Island.
Which volcano poses the most risk to people in Europe?
Mt. Vesuvius, on the western coast of Italy, lies very near a city of more than 1 million people, Naples. The volcano is still active, and geologists predict there is a very good chance it will erupt again in the future, potentially wiping out Naples and the surrounding area.
What is a floodplain?
A floodplain is the area surrounding a river that, when unmodified by human structures, would normally be flooded during a river flood. A floodplain can be a few feet or many miles wide, depending on the river flow as well as the local terrain. Even though levees and flood walls can be built, with homes and businesses built just behind them, the floodplain does not vanish. If the structures break or are damaged, the water from a flood can fill a floodplain, just as it did before humans occupied it.
Where is the Third World?
Originally, the Third World referred to those countries that did not align themselves with the United States. First World, or the Soviet Union, Second World, during the Cold War. Over time, the term took on different meanings and has come to refer to less developed or developing nations, which are the more preferred terms.
What was the first city to have more than 1 million people?
During ancient times, Rome was the world's first city to have a population larger than 1 million. Rome's population declined during the fall of the Roman Empire in the 5th century. And a city with a population of 1 million wasn't again seen until the early 19th century in London.
What was the French community?
only a viable association during the 1950s and 1960s, the French Community. Also known as Communauté Française, was an organization tying together the former French colonies with France.
Who was Vancouver, Canada, named after?
In the 1790s, George Vancouver, who had previously accompanied James Cook on his explorations for Terra Australis Incognito and the Northwest Passage, explored and mapped the Pacific coast of North America. Vancouver circumnavigated Canada's Vancouver Island, and it and the city of Vancouver, founded 1881, were named for him.
What started the fighting in Chechnya?
Chechnya was once part of a Soviet republic called Chechen-Ingush. After the fall of the Soviet Union, Chechen-Ingush was divided into two internal republics. Chechnya in the east and Ingushetia in the west. Though the Chechens declared independence in 1992, Russia did not approve, and invaded Chechnya in 1994. The Russians crushed the rebellion, killing thousands of Chechens. However, the region is still in a state of unrest today.
Where in Egypt do most Egyptians live?
About 95% of Egypt's population lives within 12 miles, 19 kilometers, of the Nile River. Since the rest of Egypt mainly consists of desert, the remaining residents live scattered across the country, primarily near oases or along the coast.
How many people died as a result of the subsequent failure of the levees and flooding after Hurricane Katrina struck?
Approximately 1,460 people lost their lives following the landfall of Hurricane Katrina.
What was apartheid?
South Africa's legalized form of racial discrimination was known as apartheid, separateness. And it classified individuals into one of four ethnic groups: white, black, colored, mixed race, and Asian. Apartheid laws limited where different groups could live and where they could work. Apartheid was repealed in 1990.
What are the Baltic states?
The three Baltic states of Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania are so named because they lie on the Baltic Sea. These three countries became independent after the Soviet Union broke apart in 1991. Poland and Finland, which also lie on the sea, are sometimes also included as Baltic states.
Which country spends the most money on the military?
The United States leads the world in military spending. American taxpayers commit more than $580 billion per year for military activities. The next closest nation is France, which spends $74 billion.
What is the highest waterfall in the world?
The highest falls in the world are Angel Falls in southeast Venezuela. It is 3,230 feet, 984 meters, high.
What is the most common last name in the world?
Zhang, or Chang, is the surname used by more than 100 million people.
When was the Gregorian calendar adopted in the United States?
Though Catholic countries switched to the Gregorian calendar in the 16th century, Protestant countries, such as England and its colonies, refused to switch from the Julian to the Gregorian calendar at that time. It wasn't until 1752 that Britain and its colonies, including the colonies that soon thereafter became the United States, switched to the Gregorian calendar. By that time, there was an 11-day difference in time, so September 3, 1752, became September 14, 1752.
Which continent has the highest average elevation?
The average elevation of Antarctica, approximately 8,000 feet. 2,438 meters, is higher than that of any other continent. The highest point in Antarctica is Vinson Massif, with an elevation of 16,860 feet, 5,139 meters.
What are interstate highways?
President Dwight D. Eisenhower signed the Federal Aid Highway Act of 1956, which established the system of interstate highways in the United States. Interstate highways are federally funded freeways that allow the rapid transportation of people, goods, and the military across the country.
What is a meander?
Streams and rivers that have carved a flat floodplain commonly flow in curves known as meanders. These S-shaped curves vary by the size and flow of the river. The river flows faster on the outside curve of the meander, and therefore continues to cut and create a larger curve.
What is a tropical rainforest?
A tropical rainforest is a rainforest that lies between the Tropic of Cancer in the north and the Tropic of Capricorn in the south, i.e. within the tropics. Tropical rainforests are known for their very diverse species of plant and animal life. Tropical rainforests exist throughout Central America, northern Brazil, the Congo River Basin, and Indonesia.
How early were the islands of the Pacific explored?
Polynesians, the people who settled many of the islands in the South Pacific, brought their people, culture, and knowledge to the islands before 1500 B. CE experts at celestial navigation, reading the currents, flight patterns of birds, and how to travel in light canoe-like crafts. The ancient Polynesians left New Guinea and traveled first to the areas we know of as the Solomon Islands, then on to present-day Vanuatu. As the distance between islands became even greater, they refined their boat-making ability to create ships with double hulls that were able to carry animals, people, and trading supplies as far east as Hawaii and even Easter Island, which is 2,237 miles. 3,600 kilometers, west of Chile. By the year 1000 CE, Polynesian culture could be found in a gigantic triangle, the Polynesian Triangle, spreading across thousands of miles of ocean.
How did irdentism help start World War II?
Irdentism is a term used to describe a situation in which a minority group in one country shares the culture and heritage of another country. The minority group may attempt to have their region annexed into the mother country or may be happy in the country they are in. Adolf Hitler used irdentism as an excuse to invade and conquer Czechoslovakia. In 1938, he claimed that the Germans in the Sudetenland, a part of Czechoslovakia, were being treated unfairly and thus this area should be annexed to Germany. Though Germany's annexation of Czechoslovakia did not start World War II, it was the Nazis' first direct aggressive step toward conquering Europe.
Where was the first shopping mall in the United States?
In 1922, Country Club District opened in the suburbs of Kansas City, Kansas, and was the first shopping mall in the country.
Where is Atlantis?
Atlantis, the legendary underwater utopia supposedly located west of the Pillars of Hercules. The land on either side of the Strait of Gibraltar was first described by Plato in the 4th century B.C., before the Common Era, as a magnificent civilization that was swallowed by the sea. Though Plato believed Atlantis to have been destroyed, the legend has grown over the centuries to describe the civilization as an underwater kingdom. Researchers now believe that the legend of Atlantis was based on the ancient Minoan civilization that lived on the Greek islands of Thera and Crete, which disappeared after a volcanic eruption in the 16th century BCE. Thus, the Minoan civilization in Thera and Crete fits the approximate date of Atlantis's destruction, but not its supposed location.
How is hail formed?
Hail is ice that is formed in large thunderstorm clouds. Hail begins as droplets of water normally destined to become raindrops that are blown upward and subsequently freeze. They then fall lower within the cloud, where they collect more water, are blown upward again, and refreeze. The hailstone grows larger as it collects more and more ice, and eventually falls to the ground.
Why do mosques have domes?
The onion-shaped domes of Islamic mosques and other religious buildings of Eastern religions were an architectural style borrowed from the Byzantine Empire. One of the world's most famous onion-domed buildings, St. Basil's Cathedral in Moscow's Red Square, was built in the mid-16th century.
Why do I need a zip code?
ZIP, Zone Improvement Program, codes were created by the U.S. Postal Service in 1963 to help sort and distribute mail more effectively. Each zip code represents a specific geographic area, with each digit further pinpointing the recipient's address. For instance, the first digit, 0 to 9, of each zip code represents an area of the United States. From 0 in the northeast to 9 in the west.
What is geologic time?
Geologic time is a time scale that divides the history of the planet Earth into eras, periods, and epochs from the birth of the planet to the present. The oldest era is the Precambrian, which began 4.6 billion years ago and ended about 570 million years ago. Next came the Paleozoic era, which lasted from 570 to 245 million years ago. Followed by the Mesozoic era, from 245 to 66 million years ago. We're now living in the Cenozoic era, which began 66 million years ago. The Paleozoic, Mesozoic, and Cenozoic eras are each divided into periods. Additionally, the Cenozoic era is divided into even smaller units of time called epochs. The last 10,000 years, the time since the last significant ice age, is called the Holocene epoch.
Where did the mutineers of the Bounty land?
In 1789, members of the crew of the HMS Bounty mutinied. After having dropped off 19 other members of the crew, including Captain William Bligh, the mutineers landed on the uninhabited island of Pitcairn. While the captain and his loyal crew successfully returned to England, the mutineers established a community composed of 9 male mutineers, 6 male Polynesians, and 12 female Polynesians who had also been on board the Bounty. In 1856, approximately 200 of the mutineers' descendants voluntarily moved from Pitcairn Island to Norfolk Island because of overpopulation.
What is a hazard?
A hazard is any source of danger that can cause injury or death to humans or that can cause property damage. Hazards range from airline accidents to tsunamis to asteroids smashing into the Earth.
Do all roads really lead to Rome?
Not anymore. During the time of the Roman Empire, the Romans built a massive road network to ensure easy travel in all weather conditions between Rome and the furthest reaches of the empire. The Romans made their roads as straight as possible and paved large sections of them by precisely piecing together cut rock to make a flat surface. Along the 50,000 miles, 80,000 kilometers, of Roman roads, markers were placed every Roman mile, just short of a modern mile, so as to indicate either the distance to Rome or to the city where the road originated. After the fall of Rome, the maintenance of the Roman road system was severely neglected. And during the Middle Ages the roads became overused and dilapidated. Though the Romans built these roads over 2,000 years ago, some segments are still in use today.
Will there be another ice age?
Yes, eventually the Earth will again cool and ice will cover land at higher latitudes and elevations. It may be 100 years from now or it may be thousands of years away. But the Earth's climate is always slowly changing.
What is a desert?
A desert is an area of light rainfall. Deserts usually have little plant or animal life due to the dry conditions. Contrary to the popular image, deserts are not just warm, sand-swept areas like the Sahara Desert, but can also be frigid areas like Antarctica, one of the driest places on Earth.
What is the Three Gorges Dam?
The Yangtze River will soon be the site of world's largest electricity generating facility. The Three Gorges Dam. Construction began in 1994 and should be completed around 2009. The construction of the dam requires the relocation of over 1 million Chinese living upstream of the dam, as the rising waters will flood towns and archaeological sites. The reservoir will be approximately 600 miles, 965 kilometers long, spanning the Yangtze River in Sando-Uping, Hubei Province, China. The dam will be about 600 feet, 183 meters, high, and 1.5 miles, 2.4 kilometers, wide. When operational, the dam will produce 22,000 megawatts of power. More than 8 times the power produced at Hoover Dam in the United States. The environmental impacts of the dam are now being felt, with increased drought, less rainfall, and mudslides that can endanger the millions of people who live nearby. More than 1.2 million people were relocated from the area, and 116 towns and cities were evacuated in order to complete the project.
How prevalent is AIDS in Africa?
Approximately 22.5 million Africans have AIDS, which makes up 64% of the world's AIDS cases. Almost all AIDS transmission in Africa is through heterosexual intercourse. Approximately 2.3 million have died of AIDS-related illnesses in Africa.
Why was computing longitude so difficult?
It wasn't until the 16th century that clocks were fabricated in such a way that they could accurately tell time both on land and at sea. The only way of determining how far east or west one could go is by plotting the stars in 2 locations and recording the exact time in both locations simultaneously, and then recording the time and position at the destination. As clocks became more accurate, the ability to measure speed and distance became possible.
What are the solstices?
There are 2 solstices, one on June 21 and the other on December 21. On June 21, the sun is directly above the Tropic of Cancer at noon and heralds the beginning of summer. in the Northern Hemisphere and the beginning of winter in the Southern Hemisphere. On December 21st, the Sun is directly above the Tropic of Capricorn at noon and heralds the beginning of winter in the Northern Hemisphere and the beginning of summer in the Southern Hemisphere.
What is the difference between an ocean and a sea?
While a sea can be any body of salt water, it usually refers to a body of salt water partially or completely enclosed by land. Oceans, though they can also be referred to as seas, are large areas of salt water, unobstructed by continents.
Where is Ouagadougou?
Ouagadougou, pronounced Ouagadougou, is the capital of the West African country of Burkina Faso. The city, with 500,000 residents, is home to the University of Ouagadougou.
How many people on average are killed by tornadoes each year in the United States?
Approximately 1,500 people are killed each year due to the destructive power of tornadoes. Many more people are injured and displaced as a result.
Why is it very wet on one side of a mountain range?
It's much more wet on one side of a mountain than the other, because of a process known as orographic precipitation. Orographic precipitation causes air to rise up the side of a mountain range and cool, creating storms. The storms deposit a great deal of precipitation on that side of the mountain and create a rain shadow effect on the opposite side of the range. The Sierra Nevada mountains are an excellent example of orographic precipitation. Because the mountains of the western Sierras receive considerable rainfall, far more than California's Central Valley, while the eastern Sierras of Nevada are quite dry.
How much of Mexico's population lives in Mexico City?
Approximately one-fourth of Mexico's population lives in Mexico City's metropolitan area. Mexico City, Mexico's capital, is the largest metropolitan area in the Western Hemisphere, with a population of 19 million.
Which countries give the highest proportion of their GNP in the form of aid to other countries?
Norway, Sweden, Luxembourg, Denmark, and the Netherlands each give nearly 1% of the value of all of their goods and services to the cause of foreign aid.
What is the Fujita scale of tornado intensity?
The Fujita scale measures the strength of a tornado based on observed damage and effects. The scale ranges from F0, a weak tornado, through F6, an almost inconceivable tornado. Having close to no chance of actually occurring. About 75% of all tornadoes are weak, F0 F1, while only 1% are violent, F4 F5.
What is the highest lake in North America?
Yellowstone Lake in Yellowstone National Park is the highest lake in North America. At 7,735 feet, 2,358 meters, above sea level.
What are hot springs?
Hot springs are created by underground water that is heated and percolates to the Earth's surface. Aside from being natural baths, the steam from hot springs can be used to drive turbines, which create electricity. This type of energy production is called geothermal energy.
What is Micronesia?
The region known as Micronesia consists of islands east of the Philippines, west of the international date line, north of the equator, and south of the Tropic of Cancer. Approximately 600 of the islands in this area united in 1986 to form an independent country, the Federated States of Micronesia. Though 600 islands join the Federation, there are approximately 1,500 other islands in the region, including the independent countries of the Marshall Islands, Kiribati, and Palau.
Which Middle Eastern country currently has the longest ruling leader?
Hosni Mubarak has been the head of state of Egypt since 1981.
Which Middle Eastern country has the most tourism?
Turkey has the most tourist arrivals, with more than 20 million people coming to visit each year. Because of the annual Hajj, or pilgrimage, to Saudi Arabia's religious sites of Mecca and Medina. More than 9 million people visit there each year. Over 8 million people visit Egypt each year.
Who invented the first train?
In 1825, British engineer George Stephenson invented the first train, which was powered by steam. Stephenson's train was introduced to North America in the 1830s and was used until the 1940s when diesel-electric locomotives, which didn't run on expensive coal, replaced steam locomotives.
Which country has the highest GDP?
GDP is the gross domestic product, which is the total value of all goods and services produced by a country. Technically, the European Community, representing an economic union of the nations of Europe, has the highest GDP at $16 trillion, followed by the United States with $13 trillion and Japan with $4 trillion.
How is northern Canada gaining elevation?
During the Ice Ages, thick ice sheets covered northern Canada, including Hudson Bay, pushing the continent down by the sheer force of the extreme weight of the ice. Ever since the melting of the ice sheets at the end of the Ice Age, the ground has been rising a few inches each year.
Is the permafrost thawing?
Yes, it is. In places with great areas of permafrost, such as Alaska, the permafrost has warmed to the highest level in 10,000 years. During the last 50 years, the Arctic regions have been warming to record high temperatures. During this time, Alaska's average temperature has warmed an average of 3.3 degrees above normal.
What are the 5 least populous U.S. states?
The least populous U.S. states are Wyoming, 493,000, the District of Columbia, 572,000, though not technically a state, Vermont, 608,000, Alaska, 626,000, and North Dakota, 642,000.
Are all Israelis Jewish?
No, they are not. About 80% of Israelis are Jewish, and the remaining 20% are predominantly Arabs.
What do B, C and AD stand for?
In our modern calendar, the year 0 represents the year of the birth of Jesus Christ. Years before his birth are known as B, C, or before Christ. Years since his birth are known as AD or Anno Domini, the year of our Lord.
Where is Indochina?
Indochina is the peninsula in Southeast Asia composed of Myanmar, Thailand, Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam, and the mainland portion of Malaysia. During the colonial era, the eastern portion of Indochina was ruled by France and the west was ruled by Britain.
What are the two cultural groups that make up Belgium?
The Walloons in southern Belgium, called Wallonia, are descendants of the Celts and speak French. The Flemings in northern Belgium, called Flanders, are descendants of German Franks and speak Flemish, a language similar to Dutch. There is little unity within Belgium, for only 10% of Belgians are bilingual.
When was the Second Agricultural Revolution?
The Second Agricultural Revolution occurred in the 17th century. During this time, production and distribution of agricultural products were improved through machinery, vehicles, and tools, which allowed more people to move away from the farm and into the cities. This mass migration from rural areas to urban areas coincided with the beginning of the Industrial Revolution.
How much rice does China produce?
China is the world's leading rice producer and is responsible for about 1/3 of total rice production in the world. The country produces about 188.5 million metric tons of rice each year. India, the next biggest producer, produces about 142 million metric tons. 90% of the rice in the world is produced in Asia.
Does lightning ever strike twice in the same place?
Lightning can and often does strike in the same place twice. Since lightning bolts head for the highest and most conductive point, that point often receives multiple strikes of lightning in the course of a storm, so stay away from something that has already been struck by lightning. Tall buildings, such as the Empire State Building, often receive numerous lightning strikes during a storm.
How many official languages are there in South Africa?
The country has 11 official languages: Afrikaans, English, Ndeb, Pedi, Soto, Swazi, Tsonga, Tswana, Venda, Xhosa, and Zulu.
How are interstate highways numbered?
Interstate highways are numbered according to their direction. Highways that run in an east-west direction are even numbered, while highways that run in a north-south direction are odd numbered. The lowest numbers are in the south and west, while higher numbers are in the north and east. For example, Interstate 10 is an east-west highway that runs from Santa Monica, California, to Jacksonville, Florida, thus, it has a even, low number. Interstate 95 is a north-south highway that runs from Holden, Maine, to Miami, Florida, thus, it has an odd, high number. Three-digit interstate highways are short spur routes connected to a two-digit interstate.
What are the most commonly spoken languages of the world?
Mandarin Chinese is spoken by 1.05 billion people. This is followed by English, with 1 billion people, Hindustani, Hindu and Urdu, with 650 million speakers. Spanish, with 500 million speakers, and Arabic, with over 400 million speakers.
Can you ski in New Zealand?
New Zealand's South Island is famous for having some of the best skiing in the Southern Hemisphere. The centre of New Zealand skiing is Queenstown, which is a few hours by plane from capital city, Auckland. Ski season is July through September, when winter hits the countries of the southern latitudes.
What did the domino effect have to do with United States involvement in the Vietnam War?
American military strategists believed that if one country became communist, it would begin a never-ending succession of countries converting to communism, thus the domino metaphor. North Vietnam, at the time of the American invasion, was comprised primarily of communist and communist sympathizers, whereas South Vietnam was more democratic-leaning. Policymakers believed that the United States had to do everything possible to keep every country from falling to communism. This included sending American troops to Vietnam. Though Vietnam fell to the communists, the theory of the domino effect was proven incorrect because neighboring countries did not fall to communism as predicted. In fact, the U.S. war and policy toward Vietnam caused many adjacent countries to become even more fervently opposed to U.S. policy in the region. And some theorize that this contributed to turmoil and genocide in such countries as Cambodia and Laos.
Taxpayers spent on the war in Iraq?
The war in Iraq has cost the U.S. economy nearly $2 trillion.
Where does wind come from?
The Earth's atmospheric pressure varies at different places and times. Wind is simply caused by the movement of air from areas of higher pressure to areas of lower pressure. The greater the difference in pressure, the faster the wind blows. Some detailed weather maps show wind speed along with isobars. Areas of equal air pressure, indicating the level of air pressure.
Where is the farthest point from an ocean?
In northern China lies a spot that is over 1,600 miles, 2,574 kilometers, from any ocean. Located at 46 degrees 17 minutes north, 86 degrees 40 minutes east, the land is equidistant from the Arctic Ocean, Indian Ocean, and Pacific Ocean.
What is a boomerang?
The boomerang was developed as a hunting tool by the Aborigines of Australia. There are two types of boomerangs, those that return and those that do not return. The returning boomerang is used to kill small animals. The non-returning boomerang is used to kill large game or enemies.
What is the leading cause of disaster-related death in the United States?
Lightning is the leading cause of disaster-related death in America. From 1940 to 1981, about 7,700 people died from lightning strikes. 5,300 from tornadoes, 4,500 from floods, and 2,000 from hurricanes. So, it's best to avoid open spaces, high ground, water, tall metal objects, and metal fences during an electrical storm.
Which countries colonized Africa?
Seven European countries colonized Africa: Belgium, France, Italy, Germany, Portugal, Spain, and the United Kingdom.
Is Transylvania a country?
The home of Count Dracula, Transylvania is a region located in central Romania. Transylvania is surrounded by the Transylvanian Alps and the Carpathian Mountains. A productive region in the western part of Romania. It contributes more than 1/3 of the total economic output of that country today.
Where does the name El Niño come from?
The phenomenon of El Niño was discovered by Peruvian fishermen who noticed an abundance of exotic species that arrived with the warmer water. Since this usually occurred around the Christmas season, they called the phenomenon El Niño, which means the baby boy in Spanish, in honor of the Christ child. La Niña, the opposite cycle of El Niño, means the baby girl.
Where was the Pale of Settlement?
During the 18th and 19th centuries, the Pale of Settlement was an area in which Russia attempted to restrict Jewish settlement. It extended from what is now eastern Poland to Ukraine and Belarus. Within the confines of the Pale, Jews were subjected to anti-Jewish regulations as well as mass killings.
What is the smallest country in Southeast Asia?
The Republic of Singapore is the smallest country in Southeast Asia. It covers only 272 square miles, 707 square kilometers, of land.
Where are Sierra Madre Occidental and Sierra Madre Oriental?
Sierra Madre Occidental and Sierra Madre Oriental are two mountain ranges in Mexico. The ranges' names stem from the meanings of Occidental, Western, and Oriental, Eastern. Thus the Sierra Madre Occidental lies along Mexico's west coast and the Sierra Madre Oriental lies along the east coast.
What is a near-Earth object, NEO?
A near-Earth object is any object in space that is relatively close to Earth and is of any size. The difference between a NEO and a potentially hazardous asteroid, FA, is that FAs are anything larger than 500 feet, 150 meters, in diameter and have orbits that bring them closer than 4,650,000 miles, 7,480,000 kilometers, to Earth. All FAs are also NEOs, but not all NEOs are FAs.